How would you say in Spanish, my grandmother is from Spain, or I have two brothers? If you're not sure yet, don't worry. Today we'll teach you all about family, la familia, and by the end of this episode, you'll be able to describe yours, like a pro, en español.
Welcome to Spanglish Friends, the podcast for true beginner Spanish learners.
Hola amigos, I'm Val, your experienced Spanish teacher and co-host from Venezuela.
And I'm Em, your Australian co-host who's been learning Spanish for 10 years.
We'll help you get confident listening and speaking beginner Spanish with content you can actually use in real-life conversations.
Subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and follow us on socials at Spanglish_friends. Let's get started.
Comencemos. Welcome back, amigos, to episode 33, episodio 33 of the Spanglish Friends podcast.
Bienvenidos, friends! Today we're diving into one of the most heartwarming topics in any language. We're talking about your family, la familia.
We'll teach you how to talk about your immediate family, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and words like stepsister or half-brother.
Yes, and you'll also learn how to ask someone about their family and how to respond naturally. So whether your family's big, small, or somewhere in between, this episode's for you.
And como siempre, like always, we have our three guiding preguntas, our three guiding questions to lead today's learning.
That's right, Profe Val, which are pregunta número uno. ¿Cómo digo los miembros de mi familia inmediata en español? How do I say the members of my immediate family in Spanish? This includes parents, siblings, and children. Pregunta número dos. ¿Cómo hablo de los miembros de la familia extendida y los abuelos, tíos, primos? How do I talk about extended family in Spanish? This includes grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and godparents. Pregunta número tres. ¿Cómo hablo de la familia política y la familia media en español? How do I talk about in-laws and half-family members? This covers step-parents, step-siblings, step-children's, in-laws, and half-siblings.
Before we dive into all the new family vocab, let's test those listening skills with our conversación pequeña, our mini conversation. So today, Em is going to talk about her family, and you'll hear lots of the words we just mentioned in context. Remember, amigos, don't stress if you don't understand everything. Grab a pen and write down 3 familiar words you hear. This is a fun way to track how your listening skills are improving each week.
That's right. ¿Lista, amiga and Profe Val?
Amiga, sí, estoy lista. Comencemos. Em, cuéntame un poco sobre tu familia.
Claro, mi familia es pequeña. Tengo un hermano. Mi mamá se llama Annie y mi papá se llama Tom. También tengo una abuela que vive en Australia.
Ah, qué lindo. ¿Tienes tíos o primos?
Sí, tengo 2 tíos y 3 primos.
¿Y tienes cuñados o cuñadas?
No, todavía no, pero tengo una media hermana.
Muy bien, amigos. Do you start to hear any new words that might describe family members? Maybe mamá, hermano, or abuela? Let's break it all down together.
Let's do it so you understand everything in 10 minutes, starting with pregunta número uno. ¿Cómo decir los miembros de tu familia inmediata en español? How do you say your immediate family members in Spanish?
Awesome. First up, los padres means parents. Los padres. You can say mi mamá for my mom and mi papá for my dad. Or a more formally way, mi madre, my mother, and mi padre, my father.
Nice. And moving on to siblings, we have hermano and hermana. Hermano means brother and hermana, ending in A, means sister. If you say los hermanos, this is the plural form, it means siblings. If you want to talk about children, hijo means son and hija means daughter. See, the daughter version ends in A. Both words, if you want to say sons and daughters, right, children, you would say mis hijos, my children. Moving on to pregunta número 2. ¿Cómo hablar de los miembros de la familia extendida? How do you talk about your extended family in español?
And with this, we start with los abuelos, meaning grandparents. Abuelo for grandfather and abuela for grandmother. El abuelo, la abuela. If you want to go a generation further, we would say bisabuelo is great-grandfather and bisabuela is great-grandmother. Just add bis in front of abuelo and abuela.
Nice. Let's move on to our cousins. So we have primo for a male cousin and prima for a female cousin. Can you guess what the plural version of cousins would be? It's los primos, your cousins.
Moving into aunts and uncles. Aunt is tía and uncle is tío. And together, if you want to say my aunts and my uncles, I would say los tíos, mis tíos. Now, niece is sobrina and nephew is sobrino. If I want to mention both of them together, I would say sobrinos, los sobrinos.
Let's not forget about godparents too, which you might have. They include padrino, which is your godfather, and madrina, which is your godmother.
Awesome, maravilloso. Our final question, amigos, before we recap all this new vocabulary. Pregunta número 3. ¿Cómo hablo de la familia política y la familia media en español? How do I talk about in-laws and half family?
Nice. So for your in-laws, you would say cuñado for a brother-in-law or a cuñada for sister-in-law. Are you noticing a pattern between male and female members of your family, friends?
A step family is also very easy. Madrastra is a stepmother and padrastro is a stepfather. Then moving to our stepbrother would be hermanastro and our stepsister would be hermanastra.
Nice. And moving on to stepchildren, we have hijastro for stepson and hijastra for stepdaughter. These last ones are not so super common in Spanish daily conversation because you might just say directly padre, madre, hijo, and hija, but they're the technical words for you to have in your vocabulary.
Exactamente. Now moving to half siblings, which are medio hermano for half brother and media hermana for half sister.
So Spanglish friends, write all this new vocab down that pertains to your family. Say them out loud and practice with someone else, right? The more you repeat these new words out loud, the easier it will become to retain them to your memory, okay? So what we're going to do now is revisit our mini conversation so we can see all the new words we've learnt in action.
All right, amigos, let's break it down line by line. First, I said to M, cuéntame un poco sobre tu familia. This means tell me, cuéntame un poco, a little, sobre, about tu familia, your family. Cuéntame comes from contar, which means to tell, and the me shows it's directed at me, like tell me. Tell this to me, a natural way to ask about someone's family.
And I replied, claro. Mi familia es pequeña, meaning, of course, claro. Mi familia, my family, es pequeña, is small. I was using the verb ser, which means to be, to describe a characteristic of my family, that it is small. I then responded with, tengo un hermano. Tengo un hermano. Tengo, remember, comes from the verb tener, which means I have. And then I said, un hermano. Do you remember what hermano means? It means a brother. So I could say, tengo un hermano. If you had a sister, you could say, tengo una hermana. Next, I introduced my parents. I said, mi mamá se llama Annie y mi papá se llama Tom. Se llama is a reflexive verb. Remember we learnt about reflexive verbs a few weeks ago? This is the verb llamarse. Right, we know it's a reflexive verb because it ends in se. And this is the standard way that you talk about someone's name, to say se llama. Okay, so I said, mi mamá se llama Annie. My mum's name is Annie. Y mi papá se llama, his name is Tom.
That's a great call out and thank you. Then I asked her, ¿Tienes tíos o primos? This means, do you have? Tienes comes from tener, tú tienes, tíos, uncles, or primos, cousins? ¿Tienes tíos o primos? Do you have uncles or cousins? And you answered, sí, tengo 2 tíos y 3 primos. Here M combined numbers with family words. She said 2 uncles, 2 tíos, and 3 primos, 3 cousins. Then I asked her about in-laws, saying, ¿y tienes cuñados o cuñadas? ¿Y tienes? And do you have? Again, using the verb tener, you have cuñados, brothers-in-law, or cuñadas, sisters-in-law. And I remember you replied, no, todavía no, pero tengo una media hermana. Breaking the sentence down, M said, todavía no, no yet, todavía no, pero tengo, but I have, tengo una media hermana, a half sister. She introduced media hermana and showing how to talk about half siblings.
Nice. So notice some of these things from our mini conversation, friends. Tengo we use to say I have, which is very important to say what family members you have from the verb tener. And we use the word mi, mi, to say my in Spanish, like mi mamá, mi papá. Plus we use se llama to introduce names of family members, right? Mi mamá se llama, mi papá se llama. You could swap in any member of your family, change the numbers or add locations to make all of these sentences sound more natural en español. Okay, small connecting words like también, also, or pero, which means but, makes sentences sound more natural when you're stringing them together.
Exactamente. And don't forget plurals. Add es for multiple family members. Hermano is one brother. But then if you have like brothers, you can say hermanos, adding an s in the end. If you have one tío, one uncle, great. But if you have 2, you can say tíos, uncles, primo for cousin. If you have more than one, primos. Again, you add the s in the end. Gender endings are also very important to distinguish between if it is male or female. Hermano ending in o means brother, and hermana ending in a means sister.
Yes, and through this mini conversation, friends, you now know how to introduce family members in Spanish, in basic Spanish, give numbers about how many family members you have, and talk about some of your half-siblings, in-laws, your extended family, right, too, all in one super short dialogue.
And that's the beauty of a conversación pequeña. It's short but packed with useful phrases. Repeat it, practice, and soon you can tell your own family story fluently, amigos. We're sure about it.
Amazing, amigos. Now, I'm sure your mind is marinating all this new vocabulary you've learned today. So let's take a quick pause and just quickly recap all of the new words we learned today to talk about la familia, the family in Espanol, starting with our immediate family members, our familia inmediata. Val, what did we learn about our immediate family?
Amigos, today we learned mamá, meaning mom, papá, meaning dad, hermano, meaning brother, and sister, meaning hermana.
Nice. You also learnt how to talk about members of your extended family, la familia extendida. Val, what words did we learn about extended family?
Amigos, here we learned abuelo, meaning grandfather, abuela, meaning grandmother, tío, meaning uncle, tía, meaning aunt, primo, meaning male cousin, prima, meaning female cousin, sobrina, niece, and nephew, sobrino, padrino, godfather, madrina, godmother.
Nice. And finally, you also learnt, friends, how do you talk about your extended family in Espanol, your in-laws and your half-family members?
We learned stepfather, padrastro, stepmother, madrastra, stepsister, hermanastra, stepbrother, hermanastro. We also learned in-laws, cuñado, brother-in-law, cuñada, sister-in-law, and the half siblings, media hermana, half sister, medio hermano, half brother.
Woohoo! There was a lot of vocab in today's lessons, friends, but the key thing is that you go and write down which of these members of your family that you have so you can start practicing that vocab and retaining it in your memory.
Woohoo! And speaking of awesome things, it's time for our Spanglish friend Shoutout of the Week.
Yes, which goes to Kiana, who practiced on episodio 32 using the examples of her family. And she wrote what she was going to do with her family using the structure of ir a plus a verb that we learned. So she said, voy a visitar con mi familia esta tarde. So she said she was going to visit her family this afternoon. Well done, Kiana.
Muy bien hecho, Kiana. Felicitaciones. Only one tip: replace con with a. For example, you can say voy a visitar a mi familia, which is more natural in Spanish. Felicitaciones, congratulations.
Yes, if we said voy a visitar con mi familia, it's like I'm going to visit with my family. So we need to say I'm going to visit my family, a mi familia. Nice job and a nice learning for all of us today. And if you amigos want to shout out and to have your Español taken to the next level, get involved right now in our Reto de la Semana, our challenge of the week, which is this week to write a sentence in Spanish about your familia in the comments using today's vocab. So you could say, for example, tengo un hermano. I have a brother. You could say, tengo una hermana. I have a sister. Mi abuela vive en Australia. My grandmother lives in Australia. You could say, mi papá se llama José. My dad is called José.
Maravilloso. Post your answers now while the content is fresh in your minds, amigos. We'll check and highlight some favorites this week.
Woohoo! And spoiler alert, before you run off, amigos, next week, episodio 34, we're going to be building on today's episode to describe your family more in depth in Espanol, including the size of your family, the occupations that your family have, the relationship you have with your family, and much more.
That's all for today, amigos. Remember, practice makes progress, not perfection.
I love this, Profe Val. Keep listening, keep smiling, and keep hablando en español.
Hasta pronto, amigos.
Ciao!
Thanks for listening to Spanglish, friends. We're both so proud of the time you're investing to level up your Spanish skills.
If you've enjoyed today's episode, follow us, leave a rating, or tell a friend about the show. It helps our awesome community grow.
Join fellow beginner Spanish learners by following us on Instagram and TikTok at Spanglish_friends.
Congratulations on taking another step in your Spanish learning journey.
Hasta la próxima, amigos.